Welcome to today's webinar from iiko. So the topic for today is how you can boost profits with real-time inventory control. But before we get started, let me just put this into context. I mean, across the restaurant industry, the recent hikes in business rates and rents, as well as the increase in the national minimum wage, has really impacted margins on restaurant operations. And some analysts say by as much as 30%. And that's huge. And that's huge when you consider that most organizations across the hospitality industry as a whole are operating at somewhere between 8% profit margins. So just start to consider what your operating margin is, and then start to consider that food costs keep rising and waste and spoilage keeps piling up every single day and every single month. So how you approach and control inventory is going to be absolutely crucial to your bottom line success. So start to think about how much operating budget you allocate to stock control and purchasing of inventory. It's likely that you will allocate anywhere between 25 to 35% of your budget. Inventory is the second most significant portion of your budget, second only to labor costs. And then think about how much wastage you incur. On average, 10 to 15% of the restaurant inventory goes straight into the trash as losses. So today we'll start to explore some of the basics and how the right restaurant technology can help you to start feeling good about inventory management. Okay, so let's get started. The agenda for today. I'll give you a brief intro to who iiko is and what gives us the right to talk about this topic. And then we'll go through a typical scenario about the challenges that restaurants face when it comes to managing their inventory and the ripple effects across their organization and the impact. And then we'll have a quick brief look at how some key areas of the latest technology can support inventory management, and that's specifically around scheduled mobile inventory checking as well as automated forecasting, and then also how some customers are currently using this technology to deliver sustainable bottom line advantage in their operations. So, in terms of iiko, in terms of who we are, well, we recognized many years ago that restaurant operators are, taking a long, hard look at ways to boost their profitability and to help grow their business, because the industry is highly competitive and because many lack the process efficiencies and controls and ability to reduce waste and error and fraud across their business. So much room for progress and much room for the latest technologies to support restaurant operators. And at iiko, we've developed a very unique all-in-one restaurant management system that first helps you to establish a solid foundation for financial control, and then next create process efficiency that drives accountability, and then delivers the tools to help you exploit new sales opportunities as well as achieve measurable cost control and savings. How we do that? Well, we deliver a unique all-in-one cloud point-of-sale and restaurant management system that streamlines and controls everything from reservations and bookings through to customer management and forecasting and staff scheduling, kitchen management, through to inventory control and cost control, supporting your takeaway and delivery operations, as well as providing real-time reporting and analytics. Over 27,000 restaurants across 30 countries use iiko, and these range from your very largest restaurant outlets and franchises to all the way through to small independent restaurants, cafes, bars, as well as pizza outlets too. So that's a brief intro to who iiko is. Now let's get stuck into inventory management and a typical scenario. So we'll have a look at some of the fundamentals to the topic, and we'll look at some of the typical challenges that we see and the ripple effect that these challenges have on a typical operation. So here's a typical restaurant chain, and yep, they certainly look like a good-looking and happy bunch, don't they? But let's get stuck into each individual role and some of the challenges they face. So first up is the restaurant manager, Roberto. Now his approach to inventory management is very time consuming and manual. He finds it very difficult to manage and control stock, especially when the back of house is not in sync with the sales that's entered in the point of sale at the front of house. In other words, the true picture is distorted. So when it comes to inventory tracking, well, he'd like to keep a record of a running balance of what is on hand so that he can track what should be reordered and how much past stock should be on hand at any given time. But in reality, he only really keeps track of the expensive items because the time and cost of keeping all the records up to date is substantial, and he's pretty much running blind using spreadsheets and manual intervention. So in terms of physical stock checks, these are really only done on an ad hoc basis, again on a spreadsheets, which causes a range of issues and problems. Stock counts take too long, they involve too many people, they're often too busy to even do them. He's got a lot of casual staff that aren't trained on inventory management processes, and there's often double or triple handling of the process. It's prone to errors due to the need to print count sheets and manually rekey data once the count has been completed. Staff tend to count only what's on the sheet rather than what's in front of them, and they often become demotivated with wrong counts and the variances. They also don't see it as being their day job. It often gets in the way. It's difficult to do, and they start to lose trust in the process and trust in the data. And when the stock checks constantly flag up errors, they're continually firefighting, trying to understand the reasons behind these variances too. Now, in terms of receiving inventory, well, again, still challenging for him because it's not assigned to a specific member of staff who's familiar with procedures and the products that they buy, and so there's limited accountability. The quantity of items that are delivered are not always carefully checked against what's ordered, and this can lead to losses. And then when discrepancies and errors are noticed, it's often too late to bring it to the attention of the driver and have them acknowledge them by signing the invoice. And suppliers tend to substitute items without their knowledge. And really, they should only accept what they've ordered. And if it's not correct, they should hold the suppliers accountable to make it right. And if they do accept substitutes, they should ask suppliers to provide information about the grade and the size and the packaging and any other specification in order to control cost and to control quality. And they need to undertake more thorough inspection, quality inspection for all the items they sign for. So, for example, reject food that has ice crystals on that could indicate that it's been thawed and been refrozen. And also over green or too ripe bananas and so on, that type of thing as well. Now, in terms of outgoing inventory, there's little tracking of supplies that leave the storeroom and where it's gone. And this makes it challenging because there's different storage rooms and different coolers on different floors to the kitchen and the restaurant. And then the issue is compounded further as this scenario is a multi-outlet operation. So tracking requisitions outlet to outlet and handling any transfers across properties and any returns becomes very difficult. And staff resist using any requisition forms because they find it much easier and much quicker to enter the storage rooms or storage freezers and just grab what is needed when it's needed. And ultimately, this practice just leads to no record keeping, and it makes accurate inventory keeping pretty much impossible. And because of all of this is mired in manual process, it leaves the business wide open to theft. I mean, just simply locking items away and physically taking stock regularly, then sharing that information with the team would help mitigate some of this theft. There's a well-known industry stat that something like 75% of employees, regardless of industry, have admitted to stealing at least once from their employer. 75% of staff admitted to stealing at least once from their employer. Now, in the restaurant industry, employee theft accounts for anywhere between $3 to $6 billion in losses every single year, so it's quite significant. Okay, let's now move on to Sam, the kitchen manager. Now, in terms of record keeping, Sam tends to walk through his storage areas and take a mental inventory, so checking off estimates in his head to get a general idea of what he has on hand. So that means he often cuts corners with any spreadsheets because he doesn't have time. He's much more relaxed when the stores are fully stocked, so he's especially prone to ordering more than what they really need. And there's a lot of blind ordering. So ordering whenever his chefs decide they actually need something. And this is compounded further because there isn't really any definitive monthly order schedules or weekly order schedules too. And they often prefer to buy in bulk for the discounts they achieve. At face value, they look great. However, most of the time, the extra food is left wasted and eventually goes bad before it can be used up. And other situations that have led to excess inventory include when they've let suppliers step in and order for them. Now, these suppliers, they're a friendly bunch, but they're also trained salespeople. So they entice the chefs to buy more and more, regardless of the actual demand levels. So the issue here is the lack of formalized processes means they can't calculate their inventory turnover rate and how many times the inventory is used up and replaced over a period, and all the problems that come from that. I mean, just remember, you can't pay your bills with inventory that's left over on the shelves. Now, in terms of stock rotation, well, because his team doesn't take stock as often as they should, it's very difficult for them to see and understand the true stock value and to manage any stock rotation well. And they're less aware of the slow-moving stock, and that makes it difficult for them to make decisions on creating special menu items or new menu items so that they can use the stock up before it expires. And then in terms of measurement, they find it very tricky to measure many of the food ingredients accurately. Since some of the ingredients have very low grammage, for instance, herbs or seeds or sauces, and many of the dishes are composite dishes as well, meaning that they're made up of many fine ingredients. So they often fail to recognize during the food processing drip loss as well, especially after heating or cooling and the cutting process. And this is crucial to figure out the drip loss rate, to specify the amount of ingredients, and to have an accurate insight into the true needs of goods and the true stock requirements too. Now, in terms of over and under preparation, well, that's another area Sam needs to improve, is his prep lists. So this is a list of food items and quantities that must be prepared for each cook station for that particular day of the week. And this is a must because he's got to ensure he stays on par and have the ideal amount of prep food needed to meet guest demands. Now, par is going to be different based on the day of week as well as the day part. So slow par and busy par, or weekend par or weekday par. But by staying on par, he'll save on food costs by ensuring he doesn't over prep food that just goes to waste. A well-managed prep list will ensure that his kitchen doesn't run out of menu items or serves up food that includes spoiled ingredients. In addition, he needs to ensure he's working to pricing and portion specifications, to pre-portion whenever possible, and to limit the possibility of waste and error. In terms of costing prepared items, he must accurately calculate the cost of processed items, so those sources, the stocks made from raw ingredients, so to reflect the full value of what they have that hasn't been sold. Did you know that many kitchens have up to 30% of stock value in pre-made recipes and bulk production and dishes? And then in terms of pricing, you should also account for those hidden costs, those Q factors that should be added to the total cost of menu items, so paper, waste, accompaniments, and so forth. Now in terms of production, there's possibly other techniques he could look at as well. So placing orders using a seasonal cycle menu might help to maintain consistency while controlling his purchasing and also allowing for variety in his menu. Using raw items rather than pre-cooked items in some scenarios can save money where appropriate. Cooking from scratch when possible, of course, especially like sauces, is obviously going to be economical. And then accounting for changes in the business cycle, like reducing the amount of food produced during slower days and slower weeks. So, that requires having a finger on the pulse and also the sales forecasts. And finally, not to overproduce. So some core items such as soup or fries may be critical and you shouldn't run out of them, but might be fine to sell out of other items at the end of service if there are adequate options available as well. Okay, so we're painting a bit of a dire situation here and a lot of challenges that are rippling through the business. Let's turn to Costa, the general manager, and how all of this inefficiency is impacting him. Well, everything we've covered so far is resulting in a lack of visibility of cost by outlet. You know, he lacks the information for decision making. He lacks the data and the analysis to be able to truly manage the above store operations. Ultimately, this means it's impossible to determine daily menu costs and to manage his business ahead of the curve instead of after the event. I mean, just looking at the net sales against purchasing is a very, very simple way of finding a cost or gross profit percentage. But this only gives him a figure presuming his stock stays at a static level, which of course it won't. So he needs to work at least with his staff to clarify expectations and to set goals. I mean, without any form of automation, straight away he should identify things that could be incorporated into daily responsibilities. So, you know, for example, inspecting cold storage areas, inspecting deliveries, you know, in better ways, as well as menu pricing. And perhaps to hold short meetings so they can discuss improvements in how to control food costs with his staff and to try and build rapport with his team. He must keep his fingers on the pulse. And when chefs and restaurant managers are faced with a bad monthly margin, then what you'll typically find is they're going to cut back on ordering and use stock up, which sounds fine, but it's only going to distort and falsify the figures for the following month. And then this is going to be compounded up across multi-operations as well. So he's got to keep his fingers on the pulse. So a good part of his operational costs are clearly tied up in the items his team buys. So effective inventory management is going to be fundamental to his success or not. And saving money on food waste and cutting down on over-ordering and over-prepping can add thousands of pounds to his bottom line. Which leads us nicely onto Anna, the finance manager. She is constantly running down who ordered what goods and what services, whether they were received at the right quantities, the right weights, at the right price and the right quality, checking the invoices against the purchase orders and any request slips. And this is resulting in missing products that they need and receiving products that weren't ordered in the first place or are received in the incorrect quantities. And because they take stock or do stock checks manually at the end of the month at best, the final figures are only available 8 days later. And what use is that to the business? And then Dale, the business owner. All the issues associated with inventory management, with sales forecasting, and proper procedures and proper processes are having a massive impact on his bottom line, easily as much as 2 to 5%. And that's significant. Remember, right at the beginning, I said many restaurant operations across the hospitality industry are operating at 8% margins on average. So you reduce the 8% by 2 to 5%, and that's a massive impact on his bottom line. Okay, so I've given you a typical scenario, worst case scenario, highly manual, highly complex processes within a small retail chain, a restaurant chain. And you'll probably feel familiar with some of those scenarios and probably start to be able to gauge what the potential impact is on your business. Now let's have a brief look at the role of technology and how that can assist. I mean, at the end of the day, good restaurant technology is going to help automate and take the grunt out of all of these processes. Modern technology nowadays can be intelligent and can be predictive. So as I said earlier with iiko, first you get the controls and visibility you need. Then next, it's going to help you drive up efficiency throughout your operations end to end. And then you start to achieve the savings and can support your growth plans, especially across multi-site operations. And these are just some of the type of benefits that you're going to achieve, in particular when it comes to managing inventory. So first of all, managing costs before they're spent. So we're talking about spend control and not spent control. Ensuring that you can integrate inventory tracking as well as your purchasing and reordering processes. So you've got a single version of the truth that enables you to eliminate human error, get full visibility and take control, reduce waste, fraud, possible fraud. And also, as I said earlier, take the grunt out of the process. So automatically generate purchase orders if you wish, and to improve decision making with real-time reports and alerts, as well as intelligent forecasting. So there's a range of benefits that good restaurant technology can support your business in. But let me just pick out 2 or 3 areas of importance when it comes to inventory management. So first of all, scheduled inventory management. Now, as an owner or as a manager with iiko, you can schedule stock takes and ensure that the proper processes are always being followed. So you can assign them to different priorities. So, for example, you might make stock checks for items like cleaning equipment. You might do them less often, and then higher value items like liquor or whatever you might do more frequently. It doesn't really matter. You can assign them to different priorities, and the idea is iiko guides people to take action. And it notifies you when they don't. So it ensures you obtain greater visibility and greater control. Ultimately, because iiko is an all-in-one system, what that means is you can review your stock by supplier, by ingredient, by category. You can see what items hold the greatest value and the balance per supplier and by category. And you can create variance reports too that show you every detail between different stock checks and much more beyond that too. Then mobile inventory checking. The iiko inventory app allows staff to take inventory in a fraction of the time while improving the accuracy as well. So this is fundamental to improving control. It's much more intuitive, it greatly improves the experience of stock taking, and it ensures procedures are followed and eliminates any form of rekeying. Staff are ultimately guided by their app to the right location, to the right room, to the right fridge. They're told what item they'll find in that location that needs checking, and by what parameter. It could be by weight, by size, by number. So ultimately they can't skip a step. If there are any variances, iiko doesn't hit them with a stick. It gives staff a second chance. It doesn't tell them the variance, but it just says, hey, you should do that count again before you submit it finally. What it also enables you to do is to have multiple people taking stock at the same time at different areas, and then it consolidates all the information from that activity. So it's much quicker, and it's much more accurate, and it reduces your labor costs. Now, when your system knows the stock on hand and it knows your sales forecast accurately, which I'll come to next, it can suggest what you need to order and when, which delivers even further impact on labor costs with automated ordering, with food costs by reducing wastage, and possibly your revenue as well. So, for example, reducing the out of stock, I can't sell situations. So let's have a look at the advanced forecasting that I mentioned. Advanced forecasting will help improve your purchasing accuracy. iiko provides you with a highly intelligent forecast based on a 6-weekly rolling forecast, and it uses the latest technology that learns from data that's been accumulated. You can add in events throughout the calendar to adjust the forecast, and then your local managers can fine-tune those adjustments based on their local knowledge. For example, if there's an event next week, a local event that's going to significantly change your sales situation. Now, this immediately changed the forecast in front of you, and because the forecast is linked to the inventory itself, reflects these changes in the stock requirements and your preparation plans and so on in real time. You can also use this to make changes to your staff schedule within the system to ensure your staffing requirements and your costs are in line with your sales forecasts. And we expect you to achieve anywhere between 95 to 99% accuracy. So this is really going to drive control through your operations. This is fundamentally different to how other POS and restaurant management systems can help support your business. This is using the latest technologies really to build out bottom line success for your business. So let's have a look at what others are achieving with this technology. So in terms of mobile inventory, well, a relatively large pizza chain that have over 30 stores stated that the time it took for weekly stock take had been reduced with iiko from anywhere between 2.5 hours to just 15 minutes when using iiko mobile inventory. So in their own words, this is saving 8 hours a week per store, so they can calculate the real monetary effect. It also gives them very precise food cost and stock on hand figures in real time, which is incredibly important for their business and to manage their operation. Then in terms of automatic forecasting, well, this is proven success for a 100-store chain. Yeah, these are statistics for just 5 months of the year, and their automatic forecast consistently shows in excess of 92% or better precision. Now, this is being automated within iiko, and this can be improved easily to 95 to 96% if it was augmented with our event calendar, and then can be increased further to 98 to 99% with manual on-site adjustments by which is very easily to achieved by managers in store. And what we see is that when chains have a procedure for managers to go over their forecasts each week to adjust, which takes little effort and little time, we see this level of accuracy, which can have a massive impact on managing the cost of your business operations.